Hello and welcome everyone, it's Capcan and we're looking at our Death Knight Unholy talent tree from Dragonflight, starting with Festering Strike that costs us 2 runes and gives us 20 runic power, melee range strikes for 116% of attack power, physical damage, infects the target with 2 to 3 festering wounds. So base stuff, one of our main abilities, and then there goes Scorch Strike. Costs 1 rune and gives us 10 runic power, and Holy Strike that deals quite a less amount of physical damage and shadow damage and causes 1 festering wound to burst. So we probably wouldn't skip it as well as you wouldn't skip it Raise Dead. Raise Dead raises a ghoul to fight by your side. You can have a maximum of 1 ghoul at a time, so it's our constant pet. Outbreak, 1 rune gives 10 runic power, deals 10% of attack power shadow damage to the target and inflicts all nearby enemies with virulent plague, a disease that deals some amount of shadow damage over 25 seconds. It erupts when the infected target dies, dealing additional damage to nearby enemies. So that's one of our main AoE abilities. So first 4 skills are just like 100% the stuff that you would have anyway. Then goes our Dark Transformation. Your ghoul deals additional shadow damage to 5 nearby enemies and transforms into a powerful undead monstrosity for 15 seconds. The ghoul's abilities are empowered and take on new functions while the transformation is active. So that's our DPS cooldown for us, increasing the power of our constant ghoul, constant like summoned pet. Let's go, I guess, with the left side and this part of the talent tree. Unholy Blight costs 1 rune, gives us 10 runic power, just as so the coefficient of the runic power gained for runes cost is equal everywhere. 45 seconds cooldown. Surrounds yourself with a wild swarm of insects for 6 seconds, stinging all nearby enemies and inflicting them with virulent plague and an unholy disease that deals additional attack damage over 14 seconds, stacking up to 4 times. So previously it was a choice between either Unholy Blight or some other AoE abilities. Now you can have both, which is pretty cool. Let's take some points here so we can go further. Epidemic. Okay, so 30 runic power costs, 30 yards range, causes for each of your virulent plagues to flare up, dealing 24% of attack power damage, shadow damage to the infected enemy, and an additional 10% shadow damage to all other enemies near them. So that's when you're causing your virulent plague to spread to the pack of mobs. Then you are blasting them all with this little epidemic blasts, and they take additional damage. So that's baseline stuff as well. That we currently have already replenishing wounds. When a festering wound pops, it generates an additional 2 runic power. So additional runic power generation. Pestilent pustules. Bursting a festering wound has a 10% chance to grant you a runic corruption. Okay, quite interesting. So that's our runic corruption. Each runic power you spend has a 1.6% chance to increase your rune generation rate by 100% for 3 seconds. And here we have additional rune generation after you're bursting your festering wounds, which you're probably doing constantly. Then choose one. Bursting Sores. Bursting a festering wound deals 25% more damage and deals 20% of attack power shadow damage to all nearby enemies, deals reduced damage beyond 8 targets. So some of these skills were interchangeable before, when you're either taking one of those AoE abilities or capabilities or something that gives you an additional AoE spike, and now you can go with all of them, which is quite cool. Or Ibn Fever. Virulent Plague deals 15% more damage over time in half the duration. Or maybe it was the case between these 2 things, and there was 3rd talent near them that maybe even was Unholy Blight. Man, I don't really remember it so freshly, but it's cool that you have your old bursting festering wounds AoE stuff, and you have your virulent plague deals more damage faster. And we have our Vile Contagion. 30 runic power, instant cast, 1.5 minutes cooldown. Inflict disease upon your enemies, spreading festering wounds equal to the amount currently active on your target to 8 nearby enemies. Holy moles! Okay, which is quite interesting. So you're stacking your festering wounds, then you're spreading them with Vile Contagion. 1.5 minutes cooldown, which means that it's probably gonna be up every single or two Mythic Plus packs. Yeah, quite interesting. Pretty good, pretty decent AoE, like additional damage stacking stuff. Pestilence. Death and decay damage has a 10% chance to apply a festering wound to the enemy, so even more festering wound generation in AoE situations, which is quite handy all the time. Have no problems, nothing against it. It's very good that we have something like that. So the talent that we've got for us, but we didn't looked upon it. Festering strike and festering wound damage increased by 20%. So for 2 stacks, okay. For like two stacks of the talent, you're dealing 20% increased damage. Okay. And then of course our Apocalypse. Instant 1.5 minutes cooldown. Bring doom upon the enemy, dealing 50% attack power shadow damage and bursting up to 4 festering wounds on the targets, which is one of our main single target cooldowns, one of our main just cooldowns, one of our main PvP talents, which is that's a great skill. It generates your runes. It has a decent cooldown, and it deals quite a bunch of damage. It summons your army of the dead as well. So yeah, like just a good from all the points about this ability. Festering strikes. Festering strike has a 15% chance to generate 1 rune. Oh, so it can like regenerate your runes. So here we had additional runic power generation, and here we have runes, additional rune savings generation / Unholy Command. The cooldown of Dark Transmission is reduced by 8 and then 15 seconds, and it was 1 minute and 45 seconds, which may be, it's up for 15 seconds. Which means that it's gonna be down only for 30 seconds. Yeah, it's quite cool. You may even take it. I don't really know about numbers, need to calculate all that stuff. By the way, we didn't check this talent out. Increases your maximum runic power by 10 and then by 20. Alright, maybe not the hottest thing in the world, but can be useful, of course, in some situations. Then choose one. Magus of the Dead. Apocalypse and Army of the Dead also summons a Magus of the Dead who hurls frostbolts and shadow bolts at your foes. Wasn't that with the Raise Dead that the Magus was with you constantly, or that was like on the DPS cooldowns? Man, I don't really remember this, but I do remember that there was an additional pet that you could have had with some of the talent. It was minor and stuff like that, but you still could have him. When your ghouls expire, they explode in viscera, dealing 24% of attack power shadow damage to nearby enemies, which makes Apocalypse and your Army of the Dead better AoE cooldowns, way better AoE cooldowns. And Apocalypse only have 1.5 minutes cooldown, which is not bad at all. And Frost Mages are probably more for the single target. Improved Death Coil. Death Coil deals 15% additional damage and 6 out 1 additional nearby enemy and 2 additional, man. So Death Coil deals 30% additional damage and 6 out 1 additional nearby target, which means that you have cleave kinda on 1 spell. Okay, not bad of course, but man, if it would have 2 additional nearby 10 enemies and it's gonna be a semi AoE ability, it would have been so much cooler. But again, for AoE you already have your Epidemic and you probably wouldn't really use Death Coil anyway. So yeah, Coil of Devastation. Death Coil causes the target to take an additional 35% of the direct damage dealt over 4 seconds. Does it take additional damage from you or from all the sources? Probably not from all sources, like not from your group. Because it's gonna be, it would have been hella broken. But yeah, still 35% direct damage. Of course, you're dealing a lot of damage with your dots, and it means that yeah, it's not gonna work as hot as it could have been, but still pretty big number. Looks cool. Yeah, death coil, additional damage for single target or for like 2 targets. Yeah, pretty good. Eternal agony, death coil and epidemic increase the duration of dark transformation by 1 second. Okay, so you can have even more uptime on your dark transformation with a reduced cooldown. It's gonna be even better of a cooldown, which is pretty cool, pretty good, I guess. So now our right part of the tree, infected claws. Your ghoul's claw attack has a 30% chance to cause a festering wound on the target. Yeah, so that's our single target additional damage generation, straight up, nothing more about it. We had that before as well. Now what do we have here? Oh yeah, Clawing Shadows replaces Scourge Strike, deals, so here we have 41% and 22% damages, and 1 Festering Wound, 1 rune, melee range. Here we have 30 yards range, which makes it, yeah, a range ability. Deals a little bit less of attack power, but only full shadow damage, and causes 1 Festering Wound to burst. So yeah, we had Clawing Shadows before. It converts all your damage to shadow damage, and it has 30 yards range, which gives you more of an ability to deal damage while you're away from the boss, while you're doing mechanics, while you're dodging some stuff and things like this. It's quite handy in PvP as well, because if somebody kites you, you're still dealing damage to them. Or Plague Bringer. Scourge Strike causes your disease damage to occur 100% more quickly for 5 seconds. Oh, I'm very sorry. God bless me. So, Scourge Strike causes your disease damage to occur 100% more quickly. Yeah, that wasn't the case previously, if I'm right here, and that's way more interesting choice than it was before in the talents. And I don't really know how the Plague Bringer is gonna like impact your damage, because it sounds very, very powerful, but you need to test it out in order to know if the debuffs are expiring faster as well and stuff like that. So yeah, big question mark. Pretty interesting though. Sudden Doom. Your auto attacks have a chance to make your next death coil cost no runic power, so just 3 runic powers, approximately almost 3 procs per minute, which means like every 20 seconds you have a free death coil. If you're increasing your death coil, making it better, it's definitely 100% gonna be taken, but it's way more of a single target part of the tree, whereas this part is the AoE one. All will serve. Your Raise Dead spell summons an additional skeletal minion. Oh, so there we have an additional skeleton with the as our constant pet. So yeah, it's not gone. It's great. Rotten Touch. Sudden Doom causes your next death coil to also increase your Clawing Shadows Scourge Strike damage against the target by 30% for 6 seconds. Causes your next death coil also increase your Scourge Strike damage for 6 seconds. Man, it's even better for a single target. Yeah, so that's heavily with Unholy, at least for now, this middle part of the tree, I mean vertically, not horizontally, this middle part of the tree seems very, very clearly divided into different stuff. Here we have AoE, here we have single target. Choose one. Unholy Pact. Dark Transformation creates an unholy pact between you and your pet, igniting flaming chains that deal some additional shadow damage over 15 seconds to enemies between you and your pet. While active, your strength is increased by 5%, which is pretty good stuff. Yes, or Defile replaces Death in Defile replaces Death in Decay. One rune gives you 10 runic power, 20 seconds recharge. One charge is instant cast. Defile the targeted ground, dealing some shadow damage to all enemies over 10 seconds. While you remain within your Defile, your Clawing Shadows or Scorch Strike will hit 7 enemies near the target. If any enemies are standing in the Defile, it grows in size and deals increasing damage every second. So Defile is definitely 100% your AoE talent in here. By the way, as you see, I wasn't 100% correct on the point that here we have only single target stuff. Yeah, like Defile is one of the stuff that you need to take to your for your AoE damage to be good, because your Scorch Strike or Clawing Shadows will hit 7 enemies near the target as well, which means that your Festering Wounds are gonna be popped, and yeah, you can't skip that damage, especially not with the Vile Contagion and stuff. Like you can hastily apply all your wounds on your targets now. So Unholy Pact is 100% gonna be a single target. You can use it in AoE, but like it gives you strength. It definitely doesn't give you as much AoE damage as Defile does. It doesn't have, yeah, so like it's very more of a single target talent. Ripping. Your Soul Reap, Scorch Strike, Festering Strike, and Death Coil now deal 20% additional damage to enemies below 35% health, which is again more of a single target stuff for bosses and stuff like that. Harbinger of Doom. Sudden Doom triggers 15% more often and can accumulate up to 2 charges. Okay, so 15% more often. So yeah, if you was lucky enough to proc it twice in a short row of time, it's gonna stack all those charges and it's gonna be good. Now let's go with the end talents. Summon Gargoyle. Instant 3 minutes cooldown. Summon a Gargoyle into the area to bombard the target for 25 seconds. The Gargoyle gains 1% increased damage for every 1 runic power you spend. Generates 50 runic power. Yes, so Gargoyles we've had. Unholy Aura. All enemies within 8 yards take 10% increased damage from your minions. Ooh, interesting. So Unholy Aura is something that was like in PvP talents, if I'm not mistaken, and it was dealing, you dealt additional magic damage to enemies, but maybe it wasn't Unholy Aura, but it was an aura where you deal an additional magic damage, and here damage from minions are increased. Okay. Commander of the Dead. The Dark Transformation also empowers your Gargoyle and Army of the Dead for 30 seconds, increasing their damage by 30%. Oh, so Dark Transformation, you want to use it after you've spent all your cooldowns and summoned all the pets. Pretty interesting. So that's your summoner styled part of the end tree. Army of the Dead is quite down here. Holy moly. 8 minutes cooldown, instant cast, summons a legion of ghouls who swarms your enemies, fighting anything they can for 30 seconds. Then Army of the Damned. Apocalypse's cooldown is reduced by 45 seconds. Additionally, Death Coil and Epidemic reduces the cooldown of Army of the Dead by 5 seconds. Yeah, so if you want more uptime on Apocalypse and if you want more uptime on Army of the Dead, you're taking this talent. Morbidity. Diseased enemies take 1% increased damage from your per disease they are affected. Oh, so 2% per disease they are affected. Man, that's probably very good for single target and maybe good for AoE as well. Depends on how much well your stuff is AoE most of the times, which means yeah that you're just dealing pretty good amounts of increased damage from all the sources imaginable. Super Stain, so that's one of our legendary powers, if I'm not mistaken here. Your Virulent Plague also applies Frost Fever and Blood Plague. Yeah, so now it means more different diseases, and it means morbidity is gonna hit freaking hard. And then we have Ghoulish Frenzy. Dark Transformation also increases the attack speed and damage of you and your monstrosity by 6%, and then it's gonna be probably 12%. Dark Transformation increases the attack speed and damage of you and your monstrosity. Holy crap! You can go into Dark Transformation very, very hard, and it's gonna be like very hard hitting ability, and like summoning power and summoning point of the Unholy revealed way better with some of these talents, and I quite like it. And then our last part of the tree, Death Rot. Death Coil and Epidemic debilitate your enemy, applying Death Rot, causing them to take 1% increased shadow damage, up to 10% for 10 seconds. If Death Coil or Epidemic consumes Sudden Doom, it applies 2 stacks of Death Rot. Fuck. Death Coil and Epidemic debilitate your enemy, applying Death Rot, causing them to take up to 10% for 10 seconds. If consume Sudden Doom, it applies 2 stacks of Death Rot. Okay. So that's just additional damage taken by enemies while you're using Death Coils and Epidemic on them. Fester Might. Popping a Festering Wound increases your strength by 1% for 20 seconds. Stacking sometimes does not refresh duration. So I doubt that it is like it stacks without cap. But it's very good, and 2%, it's very good stuff because it's just straight up big passive damage increase. Unholy Assault. Strike your target, dealing 127% of attack power shadow damage, infecting the target with 4 festering wounds and sending you into an unholy frenzy, increasing haste by 20% for 20 seconds, 1.5 minutes cooldown, instant. It's one of the burst cooldowns that we've already had. It can be good. It definitely is good in PvP for your burst windows and stuff like that. So some of my thoughts on Unholy. Unholy definitely didn't receive as much new stuff as it could have been. It's mostly the same things that we've already had. There are definitely some choice. There are your ways to go into AoE or single target. There are your choices to go more of a summoner or more of a just hard-hitting badass. It's not bad. It's not exceptional either. It's just pretty okay, normal thing that you can tinker with, that you can get some interesting builds out of, and stuff like that. But to be honest, not that much new stuff, which is a little bit sad, because Unholy has an immense potential to be way more than this, with the new stuff that you can slap onto it on the top. But thank you for watching my first impressions. Hope you've liked it. Hope you're doing well. Goodbye.